Do I sound okay though? The sound is coming okay?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Okay, good.
You
I
sound
always
like,
wondered if it's actually picking up on the
like
right microphone or I'm talking to you on the laptop.
there's no way to know. There's really no way to know. I mean, we could try to
Well,
figure this
somebody will
stuff
put a
out,
comment.
but
I think somebody
I
will
was
comment, right?
on. I don't, and maybe, but if they do, it'll just be like, "What's up with the audio?" And then it won't help. Hey, everybody, welcome to a tech podcast. We were talking about this pre-show because I got to join the folks at Android Faithful,
Yeah.
and Jason has this, some similar notes in his background to me, where we've spent a lot of time in recording studios. We know like how to manage audio and stuff, and you're
Yeah.
like, it is crazy to me that there is still no streaming platform that gives you some kind of way to reference the audio you're sending out. You have no idea if you're mixing it properly. You have no idea if someone's louder than the other. You have no idea if you're on the right microphone. I mean, right now, I'm
Yeah.
looking at our setup here in StreamYard, and I don't even see levels.
No, we
Like,
don't. We don't have
there's
actually
no
any
visual
reference.
identification. There's no way to know. There's just no way to know. We want to put together a professional show. We can't.
We just have to
There's just no way to know.
we have to live on a prayer basically that, we're able to make it that somehow people can
Whoa!
hear us. But, it's a
Living
good
on a
one.
prayer. And there's our
Welcome.
copyright strike. We'll
And that's
never
how
monetize this channel. I love it.
never again, Google will be back like years from now. Remember that night on that was it? Because it's today, the
You
28th?
sang exactly one bar of an 80s rock anthem. Well, now the AI bots are coming for your home.
There. your mortgage payments are transferred now to
Gemini
your
17 is now
yeah.
going to be sending enforcement droids to your home. And we wish we didn't have to do that, but that's what's happening to copyright. So
That's well, yes, no, I know. And actually, I just got an email today from a company called Audio, and they were trying
all
to,
right.
for
Using
using licensing for music and so on. And I prefer not to
as
subscribe
as
to.
soon as soon as it's a subscription, you are screwed.
Oh, but yeah,
Because
because you're
licensing
basically
and
you're stuck with it
content,
for the rest of
you have to pay
how.
for it forever.
Yeah, and I was like,
Yeah.
so I always my biggest worry has always been like, yeah, you get in there, you're okay, whatever, and then at some point, if you don't like them, what do? You can't just replace background audio in videos.
Nope.
YouTube. I mean, we can't even
Now,
replace videos if there's a mistake in them. Remember
if
where we
we
used to
were
be able to
Linus
edit the
Tech
text?
Tips,
If we
yeah,
were,
well, I mean
yeah.
that's about. If we were Linus Tech Tips, then we would have an edit video in place feature.
Ooh.
And it's maddening to me that no one else has this, unless you've got like 30 bazillion subscribers, but you keep the link and then you re-upload and it stays on that link with the channel metrics because you've made an edit to the same video piece. You don't have to scrap everything and re-upload it. And that's something that you can do on a website. It's something you can do across all of the internet, except YouTube does not let you have it unless you've ascended to some mythical plane
You have to
of
have
YouTubery.
God mode activated on YouTube for that to actually work,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like IDD, what is it? IDDQD or was it IDK? No, I can't remember what the cheat code is to get the
God mode in Quake.
I think it's IDDQD. So someone will have to correct me in the chat.
Yeah, it's like right, left, up, down, left, right, left. Yeah, it was. We all
Yeah.
know Sub-Zero's fight
BA
fatality.
start select, something
Yes.
like that.
Turn around,
It's part of
dance,
our childhood, but
optimal,
I'm old now and I can't remember any of that. So we are both we're both tired.
Yeah, it's
We're
been
exhausted.
it's a long week, but it's a longer day. And I said this to Juan earlier before the show, but I am not ready for the amount of commitment music is requiring of my kid. Like it was a lot of
Yeah.
low key, kind of every once in a while practice, but they're getting close to the end of the year. So if you're in the U.S., most schools finish around end of May, beginning of June, before they go into summer session. And with that being said, jazz and regular band practice has been going on for quite some time, and it's starting to do a lot more performances, competitions, away things. Like they're not just necessarily
Yeah.
at their own school. So I'm coming in fresh off of a jazz and advanced band concert. So yeah, it's a lot of great music. It's
I
great.
remember back to being a marching band nerd and just like at the time it just seemed normal, but now I think back on it, like we had 0 hour, we had after school, we
Mhm.
had weekend practices, we had band camp. I have ridiculous that one time at band camp stories.
Oh,
They're
crap.
not safe
Uh,
for a family friendly podcast, even PG-13. So,
we're now going to get
it,
demonetized. We're going to get censored on that one. They're like,
right,
we're shutting you
channel
down.
strikes for like content and stuff.
You got 3 strikes for one.
A
Okay.
little kid warning. This is now no, we're not going to do. I won't tell those stories. But now looking back on it, is like, holy cow, that was an incredible time commitment. And then I also still managed to, like, I was in speech and debate, I was in future problem solvers, I had a class at lunch, I was doing AP courses, I was a theater geek also, so we would do 2 plays a year, usually a play and a musical. And then I would occasionally also do community theater. So
Oh,
I
wow.
somehow would fit a third play in there,
Because,
and
yeah.
I was in track and cross country. And like, I genuinely cannot remember my senior year at all.
It,
I was doing like 20-hour
it
days,
blended
6
into each,
days a
they
week.
blend into each
It's
other.
all gone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's all gone. There's
Well,
like nothing. So people have these like, oh, I remember high school was like the best time of my life. And you're like, I did a lot. I had a paper published in a scientific journal because we did a collaborative supercomputer challenge with Los Alamos National Labs, and I apparently wrote code and worked the formulas for creating a computer model to simulate hardened electronics
okay.
to help reinforce electronics in space travel. Don't remember any of it. There's a photo of me on the internet sitting in front of a TI-92. I don't remember that photo ever being taken.
I don't
It's
remember.
all
Yeah,
gone.
back in the we didn't, because pictures weren't really a thing back then, right? You had to have an actual camera to take a picture back then, back in the Stone Age of the 1900s.
No, but it's at Los Alamos National Labs. One of the other competitors was actually a friend of Marie's from her high school, who was
Oh,
also, this was a statewide supercomputer challenge.
this is a 6 degree of separation right there. We just discovered the how the future was supposed to happen
Oh,
back in.
we know that her high school marching band and my high school marching band competed against each other, and we were both clarinetists, and we probably met before college. But again, it's all gone. I have no recollection
It's all
of
in the
that
history books.
entire last year of high school.
For me, high school was a little bit different because I actually came to the U.S. when I was in high school. In high school, I finished what is the equivalent of high school back in Lebanon, and when I came here, I was missing a lot of the the essential classes like U.S. history and
Hmm.
the standard curricular, not the English and stuff like that. But either way, they let me finish 11th grade in one semester and 12th grade in one semester. So I did basically a
Wow.
year. But it was again mostly what I was missing. They gave me credit for what I was able to
Yeah.
transfer, and then there was, I think, um, not
Just kind
home
of help
ec.
fill in some
Yeah, there was
gaps.
like electives, wood shop, and stuff. But U.S. history is the primary one.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, either way, I mean, it was still. I'd say it was still a very busy year because I
Hmm.
started in the middle of finishing high school. I started doing college classes at the junior college, our local junior college, and I think it was at Pierce College.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like a long time ago. So it was. I'll say this: it was a very busy time, and it is competing to be even busier for him. Where at least because he's going down the band camp route, he wants to stay.
Hmm.
And so yeah, there's going to be a lot of home, away, and competitions, and there's some things that we need to do in the summer before we even start next year.
Oh,
That's kind
yeah.
of weird. Like you haven't even started the school
Oh,
year. Like,
there's so much.
mhm,
I mean, I hope it's a good crew for him because
I
I
hope so.
have like freshman through junior year of high school, I have very fond memories of both of the high schools that I went to,
That's good.
of the band camp, I'm sorry, the marching bands. A little less so for the concert bands because in concert season you kind of get a split, and there are some kids who end up going more like jazz band, and there are
Hmm.
some kids who go a little bit more concert. And for whatever reason, both of the high schools I attended, neither of the jazz bands had any interest in clarinetists. And I'd be like, yeah, but Benny Goodman and all this like classic jazz. And they're like, no, we want to play like experimental Philip Glass compositions. Like, all right, so I guess you don't need a clarinetist. So by default, I would be sort of lumped in with the concert band. But for the marching season, that's when like all of the geeks are together and you're a crew.
Yeah.
And you're there. I mean, like, one of our high schools did not have a very good football team. And so we were the reason people would show up because we had a great marching band. And we were just a jam band all game. We'd be losing by like 4 touchdowns. And someone from, you know, like would come running over like, play Louie Louie. And you're like, all right. And like everybody
keep the morale, keep the morale going. At least get them
not even the morale. It was like, yeah, we were just putting on like a concert in the stands. It's great. This is what we were there to do.
I like it.
If he's building some good friendships and some good momentum with that, band geeks, they're good people. They're freaky people, but they are good, fun people.
Oh yeah, no. He's been playing the trombone for 4 years now, 4 or 5. And you think like, wow, when did he start? Yeah, he started very young. Like it was literally right after the first music class,
which is intense for trombone.
Yeah, and there isn't that many advanced trombonists in the area. But the reason why I'm mentioning it is the first chair, which is also his classmate. He's been playing with her for 3 or 4 years now, and they're continuing on to high school together. So it's like there's already kind of like the camaraderie and the teaming effect. And obviously now it's just going to open up to even more. And they've had a few events where we've gone to concerts for junior high, and they let the high school trombonists or some of the high school players come in when the junior high doesn't have enough, I guess, people in that class or play that instrument. Trombone is a tough piece of instrument here because I promise you, at the beginning, it sounded like you were just, finger nails to the chalkboard. That's how it felt at the beginning, and now it's
trombone, and then also a little French horn that like you can see like
surprisingly we don't have a French horn on the
not surprisingly here. It's a terrible instrument.
Well, so
it's like hold on, let me get this straight. I've got these valves, and then the pitch is also determined by my embouchure, and then I also have to shove my hand up this bell. Again, this podcast is not going to be as family friendly as
we gave up on monetization or even kind of partnering at this point.
But it's also, to me, like I could never wrap my brain. I could kind of noodle around on a trumpet, but I could never get. It's just, to me, it just feels like an arbitrary slide. So what pitch do you need to accomplish? I don't know. You make this longer. Cool. I guess it just changed the sound of what I'm trying to do. So I was always more a woodwind guy. Like all 10 fingers are required to make a specific note, and that makes sense in my brain, and I'm good. I also was real good at the Nintendo, so I had good button to tactile hand-eye coordination. That's how that works. Saxophone, bass clarinet. I used to play a contra double B flat, which is the one that stands super, super tall, and you have to sit on this funky stool.
Oh, wow.
And it's like, it's a lower register than a sousaphone. It was great. Loved them all. Put a trombone in my hands, nothing. I mean, whoa, was about all I could do.
Yeah,
it was like a kazoo,
exactly,
but obnoxious and bigger and louder. So
just yeah, no. he's definitely the reason I mentioned the French horn is because I heard so many people say that instrument gets a lot of scholarships because not that many people like it.
No one plays it. And again, you can see like there's maybe like one kid in every school district that actually like got good. And that's about it, because French horn is just such an odd duck. But anyway, so technology.
Technology makes music work better, man. You could just ask AI to make
why even bother learning how to play instruments when humans will be toiling?
They have AI engineers now. Like at this point,
that's what I mean. Is the flesh bags, the meat bags, will be toiling in the lithium mines, so that our AI overlords can write music and can program games for them to play,
and they can synthesize the taste of steak. It's like, I know it's not real.
I don't care if it's real.
I don't care. Yeah. I'm good.
Hey, we got a crew of people in here listening to us ramble on about our kids in school.
They're like, wait a minute, what show did I click? Is
but
this what happens to the show
catching.
when what's it called? Google Podcast goes down? Juan
Who knows, right?
because we're done,
Oh
right? Google
man,
Podcast as an app
that's
is no longer a thing.
I guess it's one of those things. I hate that it reinforces the positive, the nice warm glow that I've never been on Apple or Google's podcast apps. For me, like I love the funky old school kind of ugly last generation app design of Podcast Republic. There's
Mhm.
Podcast Addict. There are a bunch of
Pocket Cast.
really Pocket Cast.
Pocket Cast is one
But
of
there
my
are also
favorites as
like a
well.
bunch of really good free, like open source
Oh, okay.
FOSS RSS readers and podcast apps. I just caught a new one on F-Droid, and I might kind of mess around with that and just. I don't know if I'll make a
I gotta
short
download
or
F-Droid
something
again.
like
It's
that.
been a
But
while since I haven't downloaded F-Droid. They have some good stuff
dude,
there.
some of these little like utility apps are so flippin' good. I just to get my own videos back off of YouTube, I got Seal. And Seal is just this little YouTube downloader, and it downloads at higher quality than what YouTube will let me download my own videos.
Isn't
And
that
you're like,
weird
this
though?
is
Like
so
they
dumb.
don't let you download the video in the original format. No,
No.
1080 is the best that you can get if you're lucky.
And that's
even
if
at
you
1080
uploaded 4K. If you uploaded
uh,
1080p, then all you
oh,
can
it's
get is 720. And you're like, but it's my video.
give me my file. Give me my original file now. Sorry, sir. We've compressed the crap out of it. Therefore, we can't give it that to you.
But you haven't because you can still do the actual. I don't know. It's so annoying. But again, anyone out there who you've been interested in the news that there will be alternative app stores for Google and for Apple.
Yeah.
F-Droid has been kicking for a while. F-Droid
Quite some time. Yeah.
is a little platform that focuses more on open source software. There really isn't, as far as I know, any kind of direct payment model through the platform. But every app developer will often have like a buy me a coffee kind of link if you would like to support the production of those open source apps.
Yeah.
But there are phenomenal utilities. When I did my RSS video recently, the RSS feed reader that I got was on F-Droid. And let me tell you, for all of my issues with YouTube, it is so much nicer keeping up with my subscriptions through an old school simple, open source RSS feed reader.
It does get a little bit overwhelming after some time with the amount of content that I guess you could keep looking through it. So you have to kind of, if there's a way to organize it, a better way to organize it, I think RSS feed separately for sure.
But catch my video, look some gadget guy RSS, and you will make a better YouTube than the YouTube that YouTube gives you for free. So I don't know if people like free versions of the things that they're paying for just to get a better version for free. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I don't know. Lots of people seem to like to waste money, is what I'm saying. Instead of getting the better version, I'll just keep throwing money at the company, and then maybe eventually they'll make it better. But if you're giving them the money, something tells me that you validated their business practice, so they're never going to make the service better. They're probably going to keep making it worse so that you keep giving them more money to get back what you used to have.
Unless
in my brain, that seems to be how it works.
Unless the U.S. government decides to sue you, and then the conversation starts becoming a little bit somewhat more relevant.
Segue.
Well, you know how we are.
Look at that.
Like the biggest news thing in the. I mean, it's
like. So look, I mean, here's what I'm going to preface.
Please.
Talked about it on the Monday morning podcast.
Yes, sir.
Talked about it with the folks at Android Faithful. I would like to sit back because I haven't heard your thoughts on it. We haven't had a chance to discuss this just as buddies. And then for people in the chat, I've read through the brief from the DOJ. I've talked about it a lot. And there are a lot of other sort of ramifications from this that are playing out in other class action lawsuits. So I'm going to take a step back.
Okay.
And I'm going to kind of hang out here with our folks in the chat. And I would really just love to hear sort of your reaction to how you saw the news presented. Because I'm sure there's also been a spectrum of reactions and editorials, and everyone's a legal scholar now. Apparently, if you go to Threads, everyone has got like Supreme Court justice level. Actually, I shouldn't say that because half of our Supreme Court isn't really that great at law either.
Well, especially when it comes to tech is a different thing. Getting and understanding what things are.
I'm gonna shut up now.
I'll start off by saying, look, legal matters with companies, especially with big tech companies, is nothing new. I think the EU's been doing it much better than we have for quite some time, and that's because they have a lot more scrutiny, a lot more importance put in for data security, data management, data hosting, where it's hosted, where their information data is being held and processed. And because of that, we've had some improvements in our lives that I think a lot of us don't realize it because again, it wasn't presented to us that way. Like an example would be the USB-C port on an iPhone. We've been asking for a unified charging connector for so many years, but Apple forced us to keep using the rickety cables that don't make sense. I'll start by saying I was surprised that the government decided to go this route. I felt like this should have been done a long time ago. The reality is, I'll agree with one part. I'll say this: Apple does make great products. Apple knows how to make the ecosystem feed on itself, meaning you get one thing, you have to get the other thing from them so that it works. But they also do, and we've talked about this before, the walled garden concept going on. And I feel that purposely manipulating content from other devices to make them look worse is a form of monopoly. You're you're cheating your user base by making them feel, and I've experienced this personally because I've talked to people that use iPhones and they're like, "Wait a minute, and your Android phone took this picture." And I'm like, "Yes, this is for many years." So that practice has been killing me. Like, I cannot understand how this whole conversation with iMessage. I was very happy that that actually kind of became a big subject, and then we are going to finally start getting better support for RCS and for content transfer outside of iMessage into iMessage for users. But the rest of the ecosystem is a little bit convoluted as well. If you think about it, the way it's done, it is designed to make everything else look cheap. It is designed not to let you try other things other than what they offer. And if they don't offer it, guess what? You just don't have that feature. The EU won that battle. They're getting secondary app installers in there. They're also going to be able to get other browsers installed in there. Other that again, the things that we fought to get Microsoft to disable, which Microsoft was in this whole monopoly going in with Edge and not Edge, sorry, with Internet Explorer. We fought these battles before, but Apple, for some reason, for the longest time, kind of went on this: I am untouchable. Everybody can just do whatever they want, but we do whatever we do. So I'm not going to say that obviously. I, uh, I'm glad that this is going. I hope that the product of this is that we will get other options. Users on iPhones will have better selections, as you talked before. Potentially, even getting secondary app markets. F-Droid would be amazing. The not having to go jailbreak your iPhone just so you can get install like a secondary app market and then start playing that gray market, which nobody would end up doing for the most part. It's tough. So I'm excited to see what the product that comes out of it. I don't think Apple is happy with it because having to open up their system means competition, and they don't like competition. Remember, they're the de facto. It just works. So it just works. Um, so yeah, in general, I've seen a few commentary going for and against, and if you're, I'll say that if you feel like what the ecosystem that Apple is creating is not a monopolistic ecosystem that again degrades other products to make themselves look better, then I don't know. I don't want to say you're drinking the Kool-Aid, but you're too much into it, or you're too much in the weeds that you can't see the outside picture. And I'm not going to defend and say like Google doesn't do things similarly. I don't I'm not going to say that Microsoft
Well,
doesn't do
this
things similar. So there are other things.
this is, I think, the rational techie sentiment.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of tech and you're not just a brand fan, if you're a fan of tech, I think there's been a sentiment in the air that a lot of us would like some kind of pushback or market correction or additional scrutiny over big tech in general.
Yeah.
I feel like the best way to make Google products better is not to pretend that everything Google does is perfect. In fact, it's Google fans who are usually the angriest at Google. I don't know if you caught it, but there was we don't have to stray off topic. I want to stay
No.
focused on Apple, but there was a Reddit AMA with the Google home devices team, like all of the Nest and
Oh,
cameras and
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
doorbells and thermostats and stuff. You can imagine how that conversation kind of went with folks on Reddit getting some kind of access to folks with on that Google team, and just the constant repetition of questions on things like, hey, you're killing a bunch of things that we like, and you're also putting out other things that don't work as well as the things that we used to use. So again, it's like,
It's
you
it's
know,
a
we're
it's a Google
we're
philosophy. I'll say this. Google's been doing this for so many years.
yeah, I mean, it's now, I think they kind of earned their reputation, and they need to do a lot of work to rebuild trust and to get people into considering that stuff again. But there is also that kind of switch where when I see Android versus iPhone kind of commentary on threads, man, there are a bunch of iPhone owners who really think they know about tech, but genuinely it's just a constant repetition of Apple marketing speak.
Hmm.
That is not all iPhone owners. That's not anyone in our chat who is, if you're in our chat, you're listening to our replays, or if you're watching our videos, it's likely you're probably a bit more well-rounded.
Yeah,
Like, you
sure.
probably speak both languages. You're not just in one camp or the other, or you're maybe a little more Android leaning than iPhone leaning. But again, I'm going to give people who listen to us and watch our videos and listen to our podcasts, you're probably cleverer than the average bear.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're of that mindset, you have to understand that is not broad. The second we start engaging in these kinds of discussions, and we say, hey, like, what Apple's doing is not okay. The way they can hold up the tracker market, not okay. The way they can break standards and implement proprietary solutions that are more expensive is not okay. And when you kind of just lay that out there for people, folks get real up in their feels. They get real defensive, and it starts to become like this personal attack. But you're like, hey, just because you own an iPhone and your family has a bunch of iPads and an Apple TV doesn't make you Apple. And you should be frustrated that you've purchased these products and invested in an ecosystem you enjoy. No one's trying to take that away from you.
Yeah, that's true. No, we're
But
not. Yeah,
the actions of this almost $3 trillion company have had an impact on you. And you might not even realize in what ways this company is kind of digging into your pockets right now. And that's the main thing that I hope we can arrive at from this type of legal action. I'm actually not super stoked that one of our first big regulatory pushbacks against Apple is Department of Justice. That
yeah,
is such a broadsword of an organization to go after a private company in the United States. But you march the army you have, you don't always get to march the army you want. We have to see how this plays out in court. But the thing is like, whether you're for Apple or against Apple, or you're more competition minded and you just like to see a healthy marketplace. Did you get to read much of the actual DOJ
I
PDF, like
read
the actual
article,
brief?
not the actual brief. I've read articles
Okay.
referencing it, so I didn't actually.
So
Unfortunately, they read it. Yeah.
it's 88 pages long.
Wow. Okay.
So I'm not saying like everybody has to go out there and be a legal scholar and do your own research and blah 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 blah. But in this modern era, in the year 2024, and again, this is a very low estimation of the education that judges have in the world of technology. If you can wrap your brain around the spec sheet on a phone at GSM Arena, you're already way overeducated on the language that's used in this brief. This is 88 pages. It's really easy to read. This is a very easy 88 pages to get through. So
Maybe I'll read a few pages before I go to sleep tonight. I was like,
I've got
yeah,
it linked on my Monday show on
yeah,
somegadgetguy.com. It's going to take you directly to the DOJ post, not to a Verge article where there's a source link, which then lists that. No. Seriously, you don't need to mess with someone else's opinion of this.
yeah,
It is very clear language. They're making some very direct complaints. This isn't
yeah.
the evidence, and it's not the trial. The trial is where they're going to deliver all of their evidence, and they're going to work through why they think the outcomes have been the way that they are. But this is cake to get through. And if you're a fan of technology, it's very interesting to see sort of the outside perspective from a government agency
Yeah.
saying, this is where we think there have been consumer harms.
Yeah.
And again, like you were saying, if you disagree with if you disagree with like one instance, I totally understand that. Maybe you disagree with two instances. But when it's point after point after point, and it's not just Apple versus consumers,
Yeah.
it's also Apple versus developers and Apple versus hardware accessory manufacturers
Yep.
and Apple versus competitors. And it does start to pile on in a way where it's like, hey, maybe if every customer, developer, and accessory maker and competitor is an asshole, well, maybe it's not all of them. Maybe Apple is the asshole.
Well, I mean,
Maybe
the reality,
after a point.
slowing your phone for years. Okay, so this is weird. This is not weird. This has been for me. Actually, I'll say this: even iPhone users, okay, they know that the moment a new iPhone is coming out, the moment it's even remotely coming out, that their current generation iPhone slows down. And this used to happen to me back in the days of the iPhone 3 and iPhone 3G, 3G and 3GS. Like I could not figure out the reasoning behind it. Everything would be running and it suddenly just goes down the tank. Keep in mind, I never used an iPhone as a daily driver. I've always had it at the
Mhm.
past. It used to be my work phone. And it just drove me crazy to accept and understand that. And obviously, till they started kind of fessing up to it, saying, well, your battery's getting older, we started to slow down the throttle, the processor, so that
If
you're able to handle
only
it. Like,
if
really?
only Apple could have predicted
Like the
what sort of the general use would be, and they didn't put in an undersized battery that would have degraded after the first year of use. That's so
it,
weird that
it,
Apple
it
couldn't figure out
the engineers are
their
still they're
undersized
still working on
batteries.
mastering that. They've mastered everything else, but that specific function is still something they need to go and pick up on. And I think,
It's just strange that they designed it that way and then also wrote the software
yeah,
to directly impact the hardware that they put in the it's just weird. So like
planned
to Michael
obsolescence.
Pepper's
Yeah,
to Michael
sorry.
Pepper Tech's point here, if anything, it will give more insight into how Apple functions and hopefully give light to how all tech companies work.
Yeah,
If you were following the Epic trial, boy howdy, it should have changed your perception of Apple as a company. Not get rid of all your Apple products, but how deep do you want to get invested in a company that purposely went out of their way to make messaging a pain point so you would have to spend more money to have a less frictioned communications experience between you and your family or you and your kids or you and your parents?
yep.
And already in this brief, there are quotes from inside sources at Apple for saying things like, hey, you know what? We actually probably made this generation of iPhone too good. And if we could, we would have removed features and still charged customers more because we overshot what the market might have wanted. And you're like, just on its surface, of course, that's something that like a really obnoxious individual within the company would say. But then you see trends
Somebody in
play out.
marketing, yeah, thinking like we could have added a zero to this
But then you
equation.
see the trends play out and you're like,
Yeah,
well, Apple does kind of iterate very, very slowly. They're always late to
yep,
every new technology that comes out. And they don't need to. There's this perception of like, well, when Apple gets there, that's when it's real. But instead, it's Apple will resist any of these new technologies, any of these new updates, any of these new features until
yeah.
they know they can't possibly hold out anymore, and that's when they can kind of kick over. So that's also the other thing to talk about is with the DOJ going after Apple, there are class action lawsuits in 3 states now, in
Yeah.
California, New Jersey, and I think I'm missing what the other one is. I have separate press releases from each of these right now. Or it might actually be 2
Okay.
going up in California,
So West Coast
Northern
versus East Coast,
District.
West Coast and East Coast, basically. Got them
Where
covered.
is it? It's Goldfuss. It's Goldfuss versus Apple, Collins versus Apple, and Shermer versus Apple. And again, this is not Android users are mad about green bubbles. This is iPhone owners realizing because there literally is no competition in the iPhone ecosystem, Apple can artificially inflate the prices of iPhones.
Hmm.
And now consumers in these markets are starting to pay attention to, oh, you know what? If I want a $400 phone, I can buy a garbage iPhone, or I can actually buy a reasonably nice Android. Why is it that there is this disparity in cost to quality? And especially as you start climbing higher, sure, the iPhone does a lot of really cool things. Pro iPhones are pretty solid phones. But you pick it up next to a Xiaomi Ultra or an Oppo Find X7 Pro or a Vivo X100,
Hmm.
and you're like, man, we've fallen so far behind in North America, and we're still paying the most
And well,
for
but
a
that's the
lot of
thing.
these devices.
So partially, to a certain point, when we start talking about pricing and so on, and even their practices have impacted us on Android as well. Their price increasing over year over year with minimal upgrade is a trend that we, sad to say, what we're starting to see on Android for many years now. It's like it's an iterative upgrade on a yearly basis. The innovation part, the advancement part, where competition would made more sense to us, has gone into the, well, we do it this way here and they do it this way there, and at the end, the consumers are the ones getting the short end of that stick. And this is the concern. Again, if you're not knee deep in the conversation and you're able to step back and look at the picture from the outside, understanding that the company you're paying your top dollars to purposely slows your system down so that you buy another phone from them, should make you think a little bit about, like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be like in this. I shouldn't be in bed in a conversation where I feel like every year I'm going to get slapped across the face and then apologize and make me just pay for more. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I feel you should feel insulted at some point,
At some
but
point.
then you go through and then you start noticing, like, okay, I can't use other smartwatches. All of these beautiful smartwatches that are on the market that can do everything and anything, they are not if they're present, if they're able to run on iOS, they're not the same experience. iOS or the
Significantly
Apple,
limited. Yeah.
significantly limited to access to what they can do, what functions can run, and only Apple Watches can run the bestest of the
And haven't
experiences.
you
And
noticed that there's like this again, it's people who think they're informed having this conversation saying things like, "Oh, but Apple can't just give up all of the access to the iPhone." And you're like, "I'm talking to someone who literally does not know about APIs." And you're like, "Okay, that's all right. But I'm going to start explaining this, and you're going to think I'm making up things or I'm making excuses,
yeah,
but you fundamentally don't understand that there are ways that we create this access and there are tools that we use to get things to talk to each other. It's like, it's why Bluetooth earbuds work on your phone, is because we have an accepted standard and a
yep,
platform and these little tools that developers can use to get one computing thing to talk to another computing thing in a limited fashion. And that's
exactly.
how we get, and your eyes have already glazed over and you're not listening. You're just waiting for me to stop talking or stop replying on threads so that then you can say, but I want security and it just works in ecosystem. And you've now wasted my time. I've already gotten that sense, and unfortunately, too many people have proved me right there. But it's galling to think that Apple can claim to be as good at they are
Yeah,
at making ecosystems and products and interoperability, but genuinely, all of those situations immediately fall apart if someone hasn't paid so much money to Apple for the access
yeah,
that they're
it's
treated on they'll never be treated on an equal playing field with Apple's own accessories, but even just something that gets you a little bit closer. And this is the frustration I've had with Wear OS lately.
yeah.
Is Wear
Yeah,
OS
we
seems to be
moved away.
taking some small steps
Yeah,
towards Apple's style of kind of locking in and making it more difficult to find those accessories with better interoperability. We've lost headphones that have richer notification reply support. We've lost other devices. Other smartwatches seem to be walking away and not using
yeah, fossil.
Android's
It's sad.
notifications APIs.
Yep.
So I don't want us to end up like Apple, but Apple's showing us, hey, if you just fundamentally break this for everybody, you'll eventually make more money. And that's a bad way to be, because then that's sort of the death of this platform. There is no more growth. There
No,
is no more
competition
disruption.
is dead as in a track. It's literally more of the, we'll wait them out, we'll get them starving for features, and we'll trickle these features slowly whenever we want them. The ability,
Yeah.
I call it. So when I saw, I forgot what it was. Somebody was posting saying like iOS 18 was supposed to bring this one new feature where you're able to pin your icon wherever you wanted it.
No way.
And I'm like,
You could leave
no
like
way.
empty spaces on your home screen on an iPhone now?
No way, dude. I can
You
have
could
an
put
entire
widgets
page for
wherever you
one
want?
icon. Get out of here, man. Come on. You know how things
That's
work.
crazy.
That,
No one wants that and no
no,
one would use it because every time I bring that up, everyone acts like
it's
that's
better.
something that no one would want or no one would use. So
It,
obviously that would be crazy if Apple implemented something like that now.
well, not only that though. I mean, think about it this way too. They lose a fight, or they lose yeah, they lose a fight in one part of the world, and they're arbitrarily going to just fix it in that part of the world, allowing the
Yeah.
rest of the world to stay under the same thumb
Well,
conversation. You know, it
and
just
that's the other thing too. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this because I feel
yeah,
like the big news this week was the DOJ.
yeah. I'm with you.
But this Monday, I woke up. I was ready to talk DOJ on the Monday morning podcast. The EU has also put out a new statement saying Alphabet, Apple, and
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Alphabet, Apple, Amazon, and Google are all going to be investigated over the next year for non-compliance with the new DMA, the Digital Markets Act. And again, it's in this situation where Apple has tried to comply with the letter of the law in a way that is a malicious compliance
yeah.
that still gives them an unfair advantage in the marketplace. And it's things like, yeah, we'll let you sideload an app on the iPhone, but now you have to audit your own app and give us all of the telemetry data and all of the purchasing data, and we still get a cut of you installing the app on the iPhone. And you're like, no, we're not going through the Apple App Store at all. There is literally now no benefit to the developer. You're not a part of their support or ecosystem at all. And Apple is still trying to say, oh, but you still have to give us our cut. And imagine if you had a Windows PC and Microsoft arbitrarily said,
Every time you
oh,
install the program, yeah,
you want to install 7-zip? Well, 7-zip needs to pay us every single time someone installs 7-zip. Do we
yeah.
remember all of the developer fallout that just happened with what was the game engine that just borked?
Oh,
Unity.
Unity. Sorry, yeah, I
Was
was
it
gonna say
Unity?
not Unreal. It was Unity.
I
I
think
want,
it was Unity.
yeah, yeah.
I could be wrong, and someone's going to correct me. But again, it was like they tried to change up just number of downloads, and you're like, yeah, but people might install my app multiple times, and those all count now apparently, and I have to pay you way more, and it cratered the company. But Apple can go into the EU and say, well, yes, we are now technically complying with the DMA, and the EU is saying, well, technical compliance is sort of non-compliance.
Lions, yeah.
So let's see if we can fix this, because other things too, like their plan to allow for other web
Other web
browsers,
browsers, yeah.
they tried to use that as an excuse to say, well, no more progressive web apps. And then the EU went, that doesn't make any sense.
Oh my
And
god.
Apple caved in like 2 weeks. There was like a 2 week window where they were going to say, well, we have to kill progressive web apps if anyone can install any browser they want. And literally no one went with that. Like no one went, oh yeah, Apple, because security, I guess. I don't know. Everyone went, no, that's flippin' stupid. And then the EU went, you could try that. I don't think that's a good idea. And
No.
Apple went, all right, fine. You can still have progressive web apps, even though Safari sucks and it leaks all your data all the time. We're the security and privacy company, so we'll figure out how to make it work. But the rules on alternative web browsers is still punitively stupid, and how you have to manage this other code base, how it still has to kind of get approvals through how Apple and iOS work. It's divided. We're not going to get it here in the United States because our
Oh no,
regulators
no.
aren't working
No,
for that.
we have our
Hilarious.
own unique Apple. It's going to become to a certain point where we have our own flavor of Apple. The way it's going to go. I mean, heck, man, we're still running on what's it called, an eSIM without a SIM card anymore. But
Yeah.
EU still gets a SIM card. Heck, Canada gets a SIM card. I don't mind eSIMs. I'm just saying is, give us the flexibility of going between the both ecosystems. SIM cards are not dead. We are far from that medium to going away. It's still being used across the world for many different devices. The sheer arbitration of forcing eSIM only is just absolutely absurd. But the biggest issue for me, I guess, is where I can understand the defensiveness from an Apple user or somebody that uses Apple, because I feel like in their mind they're worried that we're coming to get their toys, we're coming to get their things. In reality, we're not trying to come to get their things. We're asking for the opportunity to communicate with them in a better way without having it feel like everything I'm sending you is pixelated garbage from the 80s, because that's apparently what Android is operated at. You know what I mean? Like it's like 286 baud modem or 14.4 baud modem, and that's how we send our data at. And we
You
only
said
print.
286. You're an
Well,
old
sorry,
nerd.
50. Dude, my first computer was a
I always
386.
go I go back to an 8088.
Oh,
That's
80,
what I
80.
learned
Well, like,
how
okay,
to
so we're gonna go back
computer
at
on.
my one of my
So,
first was an Atom or even a Commodore 64. If we're gonna
yes,
go
all
back, we're
Commodores
Commodore 64, bro,
or
with
Tandies.
magnetic.
Oh
Oh, the
man,
Tandies. Oh man,
so good.
that's like we're
It's
legit
taken
mid 80s
aback.
here. Yeah, we're like,
Yeah, I used to go into like Radio Shack and do those like those looped programs. Like
oh
I was
man.
never gonna be like a hacker or anything like that, but just like, oh, go to this point, do this, and then run program, and it would just stay in an endless loop until someone would like unplug the
Oh,
machine.
shit.
So yeah,
I it's
I
we're gonna have
I
to see how
find
it
it.
goes. Yeah.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, I asked in the chat, like, what do we think the timeline on this is? Like, Barry, I think, was one of the only people who directly answered. He's like, this could be 3 years. I
Hmm.
think Simon was saying, like, it could be 5 years for just some paltry little fine that Apple pays off in, like, less than 10 days of profit. But
Well,
I
I
will be
hope that.
very surprised
Yeah.
if this case is started and completed in under 2 years.
Well, even
Like,
if it is done in 2 years, however long Apple will have to try to implement the changes, the reality is, I know that a lot of us. I mean, sorry, I know, the government or whatever tries to put fees and regulations and trying to give penalties and so on, but at the end, the consumers don't care about the fees and penalties, because that doesn't change the practice. That we want change in
that,
the practice. We want
yeah.
actual tangible changes, things that opens up them. Again, we're not asking them to dissolve
I,
their entire ecosystem. Make it
I
so that you can compete
yeah,
with it.
I don't even really think we're going to get that far. I don't think there's going to be much like practical or tangible difference in how Apple does business in the United States. But after the Epic trial, even though Apple won, it gave us some talking points to share with family and friends. Even in just the DOJ brief, we're getting more insight into the evidence that they've collected on Apple and the internal communications at Apple and how little Apple thinks of their customers. And that's the kind of emotional data that needs to be shared and needs to be brought up and needs to be pointed out. And it's like, hey, I don't care if you still keep using your iPad or your iPhone, but listen, you're making these purchasing decisions based on a company whose business practices think this low of you. And
Yeah.
that's the worst place for Apple to be right now in the middle of this kind of changing technology landscape. Vision Pro hasn't set the world on fire. It is
No.
a really sexy developer kit. M series silicon is the last big win that Apple has had, and it's now finally going to be facing some actual competition in
Legit
Windows land.
competition. Yeah.
And I'd be shocked if Chrome doesn't have an answer for for new silicon Chromebooks
Hmm.
in 2025. And that's the worst place for Apple to be, is yet another shot at even more affordable and student grade machines that Apple has no answer for. They've been trying to sell the iPad in
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
markets. So
Well,
if we now have all of those changing landscape issues happening, Apple doesn't have the new sexy tech hardware thing that's going to help bolster their profitability there. And their main sources of growth are services, that vertical of services that they have. Then the emotional impact, that's what really hurts Apple the most. Even if the DOJ doesn't succeed in their case, or even if the DOJ succeeds, but the fine isn't anything significant, if you have Apple consumers thinking about the impact of their purchases, that's what does the most damage to Apple's marketing strategy. And hopefully that's what starts changing some behavior it's not. I mean, I'm putting a lot on that, but that's to me is what I think the best outcome from this court case could be.
I hope there's some positive things again. Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's going to be, it is time consuming. This is still the beginning of the conversation, but the opening part of it is, at least with iOS 18 and with with iPhone 16, if I'm not mistaken, we already have that divergence. The divergence of what iOS or what the iPhone exists in the US and what it exists in Europe,
Hmm.
and being that it is going to be gate kept based on geolocation, not based on function, because I don't think they're going to change the hardware. They're going to basically change it based on purely software. um, how easy will it be for people to activate their devices and make it look like they live in Europe, and convincingly stay with that? And will Apple start basically saying, hey, you may have activated it in Europe, but now that you're
Oh,
in the US for a certain amount of
and that
time?
like geofencing that is going to be really easy. Is like after a point, there'll probably be like a pop up like we see that you don't really live in Germany, so we'll helpfully make sure that all of your services are
We will help
optimized
you
for the United
uninstall all those
States.
additional things that you've
And all
downloaded.
it's going to do is like
Yeah, it's not a
is change it
conversation.
out.
It's a walkthrough to, hey, thank you very much. Thank you. Delete, 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 delete. We just want you to know we are doing this for your protection.
Yeah,
Because
even Michael Peppertech is saying Apple requires being back to a certain location every so often, like Netflix does. So I think they're already onto your scheme there, TK. I think Apple's already shot you down.
dang, VPNs are not going to help us out. I wanted
Not
it to
when
be
not when
no
it's reporting all of your GPS
all
data
your
directly back
all
to
of the
Apple.
yeah, exactly. Like, he's been in the
Can't
US way
let
too long.
Facebook make money on advertising and consumer data, but it's okay for Apple to make a whole bunch of money on your
Yeah.
user data. That's
Well,
that's good corporate profiteering.
we can trust Apple. We can trust.
Someone already just cut that out and looped it on TikTok. That's already a thing. Is TK saying we can trust Apple?
Trust Apple. Well,
We
I
can
try to
trust.
emphasize the
Trust.
sarcasm,
No.
level there, but
Now, and a TikTok loop, all nuance is gone.
Apple will reach out to me tomorrow. It's like, we appreciate the support. Thank you very much for your work. And I'm like, okay, great. It's like, you took the message wrong. You took it out of context. There was a whole dance after that. No, I know it's. Oh man, like, no, seriously, there's like so much things going on in the world, like realistically. And I mean, they
Mhm.
announced WWDC. Obviously, that's going to coming up in the near future, and I could be wrong the way I'm reading it, but obviously, I feel like AI is finally starting. Is it going to finally start showing up on Apple's side? Purely because of the logo, or I think, anyways, I'm reading into it, but the aura that they did around the announcement looks exactly like the AI function in WhatsApp. They added
Yeah.
AI. Facebook added that in there, so their whole halo of kind of like searchability and so on. So I feel like we're finally going to start, because AI is just everywhere. I feel like if they don't jump into it now, an extra year of
I,
everything
so
developing, they'll be
the
too
thing that I
far.
want to give them credit for,
Hmm.
again, it's the nuance of this conversation is Apple is not one thing, even for how tightly controlled Apple is as a giant ship.
Hmm.
And it seems to do a better job of traveling in one direction unlike like a Microsoft or a Google. They are still a multi-trillion dollar company, and they have little pockets of things that I think are cool, and they have a lot of executive and marketing decisions that I think are destroying the fabric of our social relationships. And so when you look at the M series chips, I think Apple deserved when they like basically put out a press release. It wasn't even like an exciting announcement, but like MacBooks are the best for AI. Like, yeah, for now. I feel like Qualcomm's about to clean their clock, but if your competition is Intel and AMD, and those companies are only just starting to stitch together better MPUs
Yeah.
on their chips, then yeah, Apple Silicon, those M series ARM chips, they have great co-processors on them. But Apple isn't doing anything. It's like the same thing, like, oh, Vision Pro is spatial computing and that has a new paradigm. No, you gave us a mixed reality developer kit.
Kit.
And
Yep.
now you're hoping developers will come in and use it to do things that they can only do on Vision Pro. But developers aren't going to do that. Developers are going to make really cool mixed reality applications and then try to sell them as broadly as possible. Same thing. MacBooks are making up a pretty good chunk of the laptop market these days. But no one is going to look at the little MPU on an M series chip and say, you know what I need to do is make an on-device AI app that is only going to run on MacBooks. That's not a thing.
No,
You want
no
it to run
developer.
on iPhones and Androids and Chromebooks, and there's going to be a whole series of, I would imagine, pretty decently powerful MPUs stitched into Qualcomm chips for Windows soon. And that's what the reality of it is. Apple has not done anything for AI. They're still slow playing their improvements to Siri. We've been hearing rumors that Siri is supposed to be getting smarter sometime. But their most recent announcement is Apple partnering with Google to use the Gemini framework to kind
Oh
of
my God, to
catch
improve
up
Siri.
to some of the AI before they can figure out how to make Siri smarter on their own. Like that's again why I feel Apple needs this market correction, and then the perception of Apple as a brand needs this adjustment. Is I think they've been believing their own marketing BS for too long, and they haven't been contributing. They haven't been pushing they haven't been pushing the limits of what their products can do. And then when we see these changes in the market and we see these new trends emerge, that's really bad for Apple. They get totally stuck, and then they don't have anything to show. But I don't think they can keep getting away with this. Oh, but if they're 5 years late to the party, they're going to blow our minds. Well, they were 12 years late to VR and AR, and they didn't blow our minds.
Yeah,
We gave them a decade-long runway.
Yeah, no,
They didn't blow our minds.
Vision Pros around the announcement of Vision Pro and the excitement I got around it was flawed from the beginning in an aspect of developers want to develop things for people that have devices. If you're only developing for people that have development kits, where is the consumer? Where is that time spent? Yes, they may start developing some early versions of application, but the reality is till consumers are able to buy these, till there is a user base that's willing to shell money for this product, it makes zero sense for a developer to make something that is ecosystem locked. Like you were saying, exactly. It makes no sense to create an AI on device for one ecosystem that only runs on one ecosystem when there's not even hardware in consumers' hands. And a number of the hardware that was sold initially was returned on the 2-week cutoff point. Very few people kept their Vision Pros, and even if they did keep them, they're using them as fancy monitors.
Well, I'll play. I want to play fair.
Please.
The return rates on Vision Pro in the first batch that were shipped out were statistically higher than the average return rate for Apple products. But not a lot of people, in terms of just pure numbers, really did return their Vision Pros. Because I feel the vast majority of those Vision Pros were actually people who were interested in VR and developing.
Yeah.
Like developing for mixed reality and augmented reality situations. But again, that was always going to be, it's the same group of people that buy PlayStation VR and buy MetaQuest and buy HTCs, is they're developing to make sure that their apps work across different platforms. And not that many Vision Pros were really sold in the United States. I mean, 100, I think we kind of hit around 200,000, something like that, in this sort of first initial wave.
Well,
not the first batch, but
even then, it was on day one. You could still walk in and buy one. There was no.
Oh, it was day 3 before they finally.
Yeah.
They finally sold out of their first initial run.
I was surprised that I walked in on day one. They're like, "Yeah, we have a few still in the back." I'm like,
but
really?
I thought it was supposed to be this new whole paradigm thing.
Yeah.
So
can you see yourself in it? I'm just kidding.
But I mean, to your point, like I don't want us to kind of drift into hyperbole.
No, I'm with
you. This is what's so messed up. The statistical data is people returned Vision Pro at a higher rate than other premium and expensive Apple products, and I don't think anyone's shocked by that.
No.
I think we knew there were going to be a lot of people that just wanted to ride the hype train, that wanted to be seen
Yeah,
using
or
this really
could have been
expensive thing.
genuinely curious. I'm not going to say that. Obviously, I'm not going to deny that. Some people are
Oh,
sometimes
but
curious
I'm saying
in general.
I believe the reason for the slightly higher than average return rate, a good chunk of the people were people who were not earnestly into VR, who were never going to be real VR commentators, and they wanted to just ride the popularity trend of using Apple's most expensively audacious new accessory, new product line in years.
Yeah,
And they were always going to be the people that were going to give that thing up and or just let it sit on a desk and like, oh, I don't know, I pick up my Vision Pro every now and then. I use my X Reels and my Rokids regularly. And I'm not traveling a ton, but they were in my backpack on the train ride down to San Diego. Like, these things are killer. They are a constant presence in my my personal area network of gadgets.
yeah,
Vision Pro wasn't that because Vision Pro is a sexy dev kit. And that's where Apple failed to really ignite this excitement. And Apple had 12 years of runway of positive reinforcement of media acting like Apple was going to set the new standard for this.
yeah.
And that's not what happened. I don't, did you also see that article? Someone who was doing the clarity measurements on the Meta Quest and the Vision Pro.
You mean I, I didn't see that specific article. I've seen some people comment on it.
Okay,
Uh,
so again, it's one of those things where it's like you can listen to someone editorialize it, but if you just go directly to the source,
mhm.
it's like there are very few people who have both a Vision Pro and a Meta Quest. There are very few people who have the ability to measure like the optical clarity of both of those devices, and there are even exceedingly fewer people who would actually write up kind of an in-depth comparison looking at all of those things. And you're like, for all of the noise that Apple makes about something I'm genuinely excited about, the new micro OLEDs in the Vision Pro
Yeah.
look incredible. I cannot wait for those to end up in another pair, just like a passive display set of glasses.
Mhm.
Give me those 4K OLEDs. But that also comes with other challenges for optical quality and lenses and clarity and focus and how do you adapt to different human faces. And it seems Apple's solution was, I'll make them a little blurrier. So you're not even getting the resolution of those new fancy OLEDs. You're getting like this sort of anti-aliased version of what you're looking at. And again, it's like that's the kind of data we need where, in terms of clarity, you might actually get a sharper image in
On a
some
Quest.
applications. And especially if the big argument is let me use my Vision Pro as a monitor for my MacBook to write text on.
Mhm.
Well, the text might actually be sharper on a Meta Quest 3, depending on what you're trying to do. So it's all of this like piece by piece by piece. I kind of feel like it's not like Apple's going to fail and they're immediately going to crater and the company disappears or
No, no,
it just suddenly descends, but it needs that perception correction.
yeah.
And they've needed it for a little while. And that's what actually gets Apple back in the saddle, being innovative again, being more daring, taking bigger risks, and doing things that will excite consumers again. You won't get that unless Apple feels some pressure.
Yeah.
Pressure from regulators, pressure from governments, and also just pressure from their own customers. When they don't have that, they get lazy and you pay more for stuff that you really shouldn't be paying more for.
Exactly. And where your devices should not slow down and suddenly become paperweight, or battery capacity or battery efficiency starts impacting performance because they feel like under throttling or throttling the phone, the CPU benefits the device so that it does not, so it meets the expectation of the degrading battery that they chose to put in. You're right. It's a conversation, or it's a circle, kind of like a downward spiral at this point. You go in one side, you look at it, things need to change, competition needs to come back, and I feel like it could benefit us also on the Android side. I don't want Apple's to fail. We're asking is for a better playing field for all of the ecosystems to work in. and for us
Mhm.
as consumers to have better selections. If I want to get a good watch that may look like a regular watch, not necessarily want it to look like a square or whatever shape of the watches are in the
Right.
market, I should be able to pick one up and it should work as good as what it should. And don't make cables only work because if the makers pay the license fee so that it becomes MFI certified, like, okay, fine. Like these are weird little, you know, nickel and diming, and developers
Yeah.
are the source of your money.
And this
If
is
there's no
hopefully a
apps, yeah,
conversation like JGJ's comment right here. Why can't we route old phones to use as appliances to reduce e-waste?
absolutely.
And you're like, I feel if we don't do well in these kinds of early big tech scrutiny regulatory situations,
Yeah.
we'll never get to that point. I feel as soon as a company says this product is now end of life, there should be some off ramp from
Hmm.
that company that gives us the ability to unlock that device and flash other software on it. I know that is easier said than done because of the way that we license intellectual property from companies that make radio chipsets and the processors and the GPUs. This is
Well, and,
complicated.
and and drivers, even just the
And drivers,
licensing software.
and
Drivers were the number one problems back in the old days.
that's
You,
how Qualcomm makes money. And
yeah.
again, I'm very positive on a lot of Qualcomm's business practices, but if Qualcomm and the manufacturer of your phone don't have an agreement, then the end user doesn't get access to the core material that they need
Yep.
to keep a product running. I mean, it's frustrating. You go and you look at all these like Linux phone and Graphene OS, and you're like, man, I'm having such a good time playing with like Ubuntu Touch. And you're like, well, okay, let me check in on the project. I haven't looked in on this like in years. And I go and I look, and it's still like Pixel 1 and OnePlus 3T. Isn't this so cool, guys? And like, I'm not going back. I'm
No,
not
no. Well, I mean, but you understand the
until I
reason.
can flash this on like, I don't know, Pixel 7 Pro. I'd love to see what that could do. Let's do it. That's
the,
great. No, I can't.
the
Okay.
challenge has been for years on the development side and routing and modding. I'll say that for the years of improvements that we've gotten, even prior, even around like Lineage OS, and even with Cyanogen mod and some of the more bigger, flashier, developers that
Those
were
big
going at
projects, yeah.
the big project, they always had a limitation to a certain point of what they were able to do on devices, because at some point they would hit a roadblock, like, not being able to
Yep.
use the right modems, drivers, or using to be able to activate all the right bands. Things just didn't work 100% because of those little nuanced bits that
Hmm.
they could try to do it, but then they're stealing, and then they can be called for it.
Yeah.
Then we saw the demise of CyanogenMod that kind of just went away, and then Lineage OS is still,
And
it's
it's
just,
a huge consumer education problem because we would never allow that with a PC.
yeah.
Did you know? I
Hmm.
just discovered this because of the Ace Magic laptop
Yeah.
that I told you
Hmm.
about. I have an Ace Magic laptop that was sent to me for review, and it had a virus on it.
Oh,
Woo!
dude, the best way to get them.
So
Yeah, get it delivered.
I have a video on coming out on that next week. This has slowed me way down because I've never had to deal with this. I've had great experiences with other mini PC manufacturers,
Yep.
and this one kind of kicked my ass. But one of the cool things that came out of me getting a malware infested cheap system, I learned Windows has a driver exporting tool. You can tell Windows any piece of hardware that is currently installed in this system,
Hmm.
dump every single piece of software you would need. It's going to put it in a little bucket for you. You take that bucket, you put it on a flash drive, you nuke Windows, and you don't have to go searching for manufacturer installers for drivers. You just plug that little bucket back in, and you point your device manager over to that location, and it goes, "Hey, wouldn't you know it? I
Dude.
found all this stuff for all the things that are installed in your system. Do you want us to just install all these drivers for you?" And you go, "Yes, Windows. Thank you. That is so helpful." And you pat Windows on the head and he goes, "All right, gee willikers, mister." And then it just does it. And
And
you
it
get
just
rid of
worked.
all the bloat. You get rid of all of the other pre-installed software.
I did not
And
know
it's
that you could do
incredible.
that. Okay.
I didn't either. Apparently it's been around since like Windows 10. And like
Windows 10. What is that?
It's incredible.
That is such a cool feature. Okay, no, I have to look into
Yeah.
that. It'd be
So
such a
so
beautiful
like
thing,
if you're a
especially with
nerd
like
like
pre-built
me,
PC. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, and from now on, especially because of what happened to me on this Ace Magic laptop, um, I mean, I went out and invested in just like a better USB adapter for SSDs.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just gonna rip every SSD out that I can, do the hard scan, probably wipe it, clean it, get rid of any partitions, put it back in the system, install Windows from like a
An
flash
image.
drive that I made with Rufus,
Yeah.
and then keep it as its own air-gapped system until I know it's safe, and I don't have to worry about
About anything.
pulling or trying to find drivers from low-cost PC manufacturers. They're all there.
Well, especially those mini PCs, though. You're right that you
They're
don't know
so
where the
tricky.
little power, because
There is no like support
yeah,
website to go and download driver for like the Wi-Fi is the one that burns you most often is your networking stuff.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, I guess if you don't need a NIC or a Wi-Fi,
On
yeah,
this
I
little
guess
PC, one of the only
it'll
two
be
ways to get
fine,
data in there. No, no, I'm with you.
right?
I'm with you. That is such a cool thing. But no, no, thank you for sharing that. I actually did not know that there was such an easier way to
It's awesome.
circumvent having to
Yeah.
search the web for drivers because you didn't have them backed up or you didn't create a restore. And even if you did create a restore disk typically install all the malware, not the malware, but
Yeah.
the bloatware that everything because it's an image. It's an image of what you had. But
Hmm.
that's actually interesting. Speaking of computers and everything, I think what we should probably cover a little bit as well. We had an opportunity to hang out a little bit with Microsoft. Obviously, is a big company. They run Windows on
Hmm.
ARM. Google is starting to work a little bit with Apple, not Apple, sorry, with Qualcomm to try to
Yep.
bring better compatibility. And way did they put out better performing,
Yeah.
implementation on ARM, which we expected. We expected them to be able to excel on this type
Well,
of ecosystem.
TK's being cute and cheeky here because when we went down to San Diego to play with the Snapdragon X Elite, we got to see
Yeah,
the most up-to-date version of Chrome for Windows on
we
ARM.
saw the future. That's
And
basically what I'll say. It's kind of like where
it,
Samsung pushed out April 1st security patch update on the 25th
yeah,
of March. That's how we saw it.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you take that and you mix it with the psychedelic ending of 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
And that's what it blew our mind. No, but seriously, for a company for Google who historically has been borderline hostile to almost anything Microsoft has done, like preventing Google apps and services from running on Windows phones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
This is a really big deal. And to me, my hypothesis, my theory, people in the chat, call me out if you think I'm off base here. Say, hey, Juan, don't be a dumb, dorky nerd guy, and you're wrong. If you think I'm wrong. If you think I'm right, you don't have to say anything, but we love seeing you in the chat, so you can say something if you want.
Please.
My hypothesis is
Hmm.
Google is taking Windows on ARM seriously because Chrome has always sort of been their Trojan horse for how to improve the Chromebook. The information they get off of Chrome browsers helps them make Chrome OS.
Yes.
Chrome, as a browser, is practically an operating system. There's very little I feel like you need to tack on for a consumer to have a well fleshed out web based experience.
True.
So, this is Google finally acknowledging that Windows on ARM is a thing. We're getting the hardware that we really need to see to get those performance improvements. And that's why I have to believe that Chrome OS is going to see an uptick in ARM machines in 2025. MediaTek has to be paying attention to this space.
Oh, I hope so.
Qualcomm
Yeah.
has to be paying attention to this space. And if we want Chromebooks to run better, why not troubleshoot on Windows
On Windows
machines
machine.
using
I like it.
a build of the
I-
Chrome browser? So
I-
that's my tinfoil hat
I
Google
caught
conspiracy.
your drift on
So,
that one halfway mid sentences as you were going through it. I was like, okay, I got
right?
I could see where you're going. No, dude, it's the smartest way to do it. For all intents and purposes, I think it's the right way to do it. You have to work with
Yeah.
the ecosystem with a basically where you have like an install base, right? To be able to troubleshoot it, get it running. Google's finally realizing like, hey, look, this may actually be a serious stuff now. I think, ARM, Windows on ARM is going to be picking up. Microsoft are putting into it. If we don't jump into it now, Edge will be the de facto browser onto this entire conversation,
Yeah.
and we will be put behind. And you don't obviously, Chrome as a browser. I'll no pun intended. I'm using Chrome right now to run
Mm-hmm.
StreamYard, because that's, again,
Yep.
it's one of the more efficient browsers that are on the market. Is it the only one? No. Can you switch out of it? Absolutely. Can you?
Mm-hmm.
I loved also the fact that Microsoft now allows you to log in with your Google account to their browser and import
Yeah.
Chrome functionalities in, because like, hey, you don't have to go to
You
Chrome to log in with your Google account.
you made us kind of switch over to Chromium.
Yeah, I was like,
So
oh, it was. I'll say that. Look, I welcome any competition in this space where consumers get better products, get more options, and
yeah.
better options as well in general. I think this is where we noticed that the
Well,
pandemic
I,
taught
I
us
want
that
to
Chrome.
I want
Yeah,
to interrupt to because I'm not going to read off a bunch of benchmarking numbers, and I
no,
posted on social media, and we've been talking about this in some of our coverage between all of your various, because like you use a Mac to do some video editing,
yeah.
you've used Robo and Kalas and Surface Pro 9s. What were your experiences like? What was your browser strategy on Windows on ARM prior?
So for me on Windows on ARM, I'll say this. I try to install and run Chrome and or Firefox on any system that I'm able to run. On Windows on ARM, or at least the current version with Robo and Kala, I'm not going to lie, I ended up using Firefox more because Chrome was just
Mm-hmm.
not cutting it the way I thought it was going to. It wasn't running like, okay, I'll say this. Running it on the M series runs absolutely fantastic. This
Yeah,
is intended, it's optimized, it runs, it just, everything runs
it's
correctly.
clean. Yeah,
And there's no stutter. When I ran it on the Robo and Kala, although it installs and it runs, you feel a different approach to the way everything runs in there. It's not as smooth. It's not as consistent. Loading
yeah,
was much longer. It seems you could definitely see the non-optimized version of it in there. Then you switch over to Firefox and you're like night and day, and you're like, wait a minute, this thing just flies. So
yeah.
I had both of them installed, but 9 times out of 10, even on the Surface Pro 9 5G, I was using basically Firefox as the default, and then having Chrome, if only and if for any reason that something I'm trying to run in Firefox just happened to get borked, and I'm willing to
Yeah.
go through with Chrome. But you know,
So I kind of flipped it a little when I because I travel a lot with the Robo and Kala.
yeah, yeah,
Chrome bogs that system down. I haven't tried the Canary build yet on my R&K to see if these performance gains
that's true.
translate
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
older ARM chips.
I hope
But
they do.
I typically use Firefox out of the momentum of it being one of the primary like password managers that I
Hmm.
use for the web, and it's just kind of like security through obscurity because no one uses Firefox. Like it's not better, but I feel safer. But I also found myself using Edge a lot more
Hmm.
because it's been optimized for Windows on ARM, and Microsoft has done a really good job of that. And when we were doing those tests, when we were doing those benchmarks down in San Diego, we were seeing the difference between Edge in browser benchmarks on Windows on ARM with the X Elite versus a Core Ultra 7 155H.
Yes.
So not the top of the line 165H, but still a pretty beefy performance chip from Intel. And the X Elite was significantly outpacing this Intel system
Yeah.
in Edge benchmarks.
Al-
So what's
almost doubling
encouraging?
almost doubling the performance gains on, which is crazy when things are done
Yeah,
correctly and optimized for the ecosystem.
but
Who would have thought that would
but
have thing? Yeah.
when things are optimized and done well, and I have to give Google some credit here, even though I'm always perpetually pissed off by how Google handles their relationship with Microsoft. Seeing those performance scores and seeing the improvements and getting to just kind of noodle around on the machine. Like we didn't get like completely unfettered access, but we got to like poke around and play with it and stuff. That Google has delivered a browser that is also outperforming Edge. And it's still in I mean, I think it's now in a public build that you can get, but at the time we were playing with it, it was still one of the Canary builds.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is, whatever my feelings are, it's just, it would be stupid to say that it wasn't impressive. Like, it was impressive. It was impressive to see Edge
we had a
was
room
a
we had a
screamer.
room filled with geeks all saying wow.
Wow.
There was wow in the room, like to have that many, like
we got
different
a
people,
solid
different
wow with
yeah, we got
Edge, and then we got another wow
wow with Chrome.
with
No, I know,
Chrome.
but with it stands to hope to be said though, when you have a room full of geeks and you get a unanimous wow there, like seriously. Very few things,
Some
because
cool
you can
stuff.
expect things. You
Yeah.
could be like, well, it's going to be better. Fine. Now, of course, they didn't bring us down here if it wasn't better, but be it that better, that much
Yeah.
optimize, like seriously. So I really do hope that, Google's not just optimizing it for obviously for X Elite Forward or just the Elite or the X series or so on. I mean, that they bring it back to the XR2s and Gen 1 and Gen 2, because again, there's quite a few hardware out there. I mean, Microsoft can benefit from it on the Surface Pro 9,
Yeah.
on the 5G model, and Robo and Kala and any other, computers that are being
While
using
we're
it.
saying this, I'm gonna just double check. I might not even have Chrome installed on my RNK anymore because I wasn't using it.
No,
So
it wouldn't be surprised if you, I didn't, yeah, if it doesn't work, what's the point of keeping it? If everything
I
else that you
know.
need, I mean, just, you got to remember also, you're working with a finite number of storage in there. I don't know. I think, did you replace the storage on that one, or is you're still running with the
Oh no,
512?
I haven't upgraded it yet, so I'm still at 512. I'm I I think I am gonna try and make that play though. I'm
Okay.
gonna chat out. I'm gonna reach out to the folks at RNK and just say,
Okay.
hey, I'm thinking about doing this video. Do you have any advice for managing that upgrade? But it seems like it's pretty easy. Like, I think I just need to get a new adhesive for the plate that
Hmm.
covers the rear of the Robo and Kala. But really, it should just be like a little bit of warming. Like, I might be able to get away with just a hair dryer and then a suction cup to pop it, and then it's just exposed. It's just the SSD is right there. So I might splurge on like a Steam Deck 2 TB
2 TB.
and
Yeah.
pop that in there and just see. But yeah, I don't have Chrome on this, so I'm gonna reinstall Chrome and see if it says anything about like
Welcome to the new,
now it works better on your Windows on ARM machine that everyone told you was garbage.
that'll be fun. It'll be fun. But no, I know. I mean, for me, I gotta break out. Actually, I still have right there at the Robo and Kala. I have it sitting in the leather patch. It's one of those. So JGJ just posted a comment saying, I think Motorola MediaTek has no 5G support in the US. I think the X100 Pro does support mid-band 5G on T-Mobile. So even
Yeah,
with the 9300, I think
there
MediaTek is
was
starting to have better
one other.
support.
They are definitely behind. That is
Yes. Oh no, no, I don't.
absolutely
Yeah, I don't
accurate
doubt it.
in international. But
I want to say
what
that
else?
the X100
MediaTek
worked,
is
and
in another phone though.
the 12T from last year.
No,
Xiaomi's
no. I mean, there are phones sold in the United States that are using like MediaTek mid rangers.
Motos.
Maybe
No, it
I
had to.
might be making this up. I
Well,
could
no,
have
no, no.
sworn.
It, no, wait. I, I don't know why I'm like I'm
I don't know.
barking on this. I know the Nord series typically doesn't come to the US with with MediaTek. The only other company that would have used them couldn't have been obviously it's not Pixel, it's not
Oh,
OnePlus,
maybe
it's not.
it might be a
It had to have been
Moto.
Moto. The only one that would make sense, but I'm trying to figure out like which one would it be? Like would it be like the stylus version or the Moto G
I don't
Play?
know.
No. JGJ, what I'm trying to say is I
Or
think they're getting better is what I'm trying to say.
no. They are getting better. Their MediaTek's modems are actually quite good. I would maybe still point to Qualcomm having an edge, especially in North America.
Right
Like the
now,
whole existence of the company, like, is because of CDMA, and they've built on top of that. But again, if you want the best total compatibility for North American carriers, I think you're probably still looking at Qualcomm. But MediaTek has gotten significantly better
mhm,
over the last couple of years, and especially last year, that's when I really started noticing, oh, I've got some mid-band and some sub-6 support here in my neighborhood where a MediaTek chip used to just be gut rot LTE.
Yeah.
So again, it's like you might want to say it's like a year-ish. But again, like as these companies start giving us better support, now we're starting to hear the rumors on like 6G is right around the corner, and you're like, great. Just when it was like getting easier to like import a phone and have it work, they're gonna make sure that we're locked in again with a different radio standard.
Because it's 6G, bro. An extra G makes it delicious.
I want the one with more GBs.
GBs,
Give me
okay.
the one with more GBs.
I want the one with more GBs up as opposed to the GBs down because, I don't want to be held down with anything.
I have to find that old. Do you remember that old webtoon someone made? They look like cutesy little like bear creature things, and it's supposed to be this interaction at a cell phone store. It was old classic internet, like
okay.
HTC Evo was out on the market.
The Evo 3D,
like,
yes.
A customer goes in and she's trying to buy a phone and she's like, I want the one with more GBs. Does it have more GBs? Well, this is an HTC Evo and it can do this and this and this. But I want the one from Apple that has more GBs. Does it? And you're like, it's supposed to be how frustrating it is to talk to someone who doesn't know about technology.
It was probably around the time also where the iPhone 3GS was around, where they had the actual 3G was in the name.
True.
Or 3GS because it was faster. Like, yes. No, I remember the old. Oh man, like we saw some interesting tech though with San Diego when we were at their little museum in there, and learning how much Qualcomm has influenced a lot of our technologies and communications that we've done and worked with over the years. The first two smartphones on Android were running Qualcomm. Like it was, the Nexus and the G1 were both Qualcomm processors. Before Qualcomm was even a big, like, do you have a Snapdragon or it was basically just a Qualcomm chip. It was actually called Qualcomm. Now we have, and then there's also the Snapdragon Sound got a 2 new generational upgrades on their chips. That was also announced within the last week as well. So Qualcomm is starting to gear up, and I feel like it was a good trip for us to go down and chit chat with them and have a little bit of kind of offline conversations, get to ask the questions that we want to ask, and get a somewhat of a a light version of hands-on with demos and checking them out. So it was nice. I think it was. I hope more things like in these little events happen more and more, and we get a chance to check them out. And I'm excited. I can't wait. I can't wait to see more things in there. But speaking of which, I just posted the video on the XR2s. The XR2 Gen 1 on the Rainio X2 glasses, and that's running Qualcomm as the main processor in there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of, I'll say mind the conversation with the video. So on, I posted a video earlier this week on that, but their processing power, the RAM, the storage, everything on there was beautiful. The UI ran so smoothly. All the operations that were needed to happened very quickly. Even loading and saving and opening and booting up and shutting down. All of the things that I imagine a computer doing in a smooth manner, this operated very nicely on the X2s, on the Rainio X2. So this was a very nice surprise. And
nice.
Shows how much Qualcomm is putting their heads into the game. And I can't wait for us to get more options, better solutions, maybe a little more affordable options. But the Rainio X's were definitely a decent, I'll say a decent start in that conversation. Actual AR running on device with, not LTE radio, but like short of LTE, but having a legit Wi-Fi connection that you almost don't even need to use your phone. It was definitely very good. But and then there's a whole bunch of other things going on that I'm hoping next week I'll start picking up a little bit more on content and trying to get back in the groove things, even though it's a week off. So for Omar, so we'll have to figure out what we're doing. Spring break is upon us. Let's say that it's spring break.
Yeah.
And
again, like, as we started this podcast with how overscheduled our kids are. And I know Lexi needs some downtime, but then also if she doesn't see kids, she goes a bit feral. So we've got softball, we've got there's a swim camp. We might take her just for a day or two.
Swimming is good.
Kind of burn off some energy, and then we might try and do like have some of her friends come over. Again, just like I don't understand the cultural significance and the sort of the I don't know what there's a word that describes this, but like the enduring nature of a character like Sonic.
Hmm.
But so many of her classmates are super into Sonic the Hedgehog, and none of them have played the games. It's the movie or like some of the TV shows or something like that. And so we have Lexi and I have been playing Sonic Team Racing.
Hmm.
So we're gonna get like 3 or 4 of her friends over, and they can all be on a team. You know, because you can have, I think it's up to four racers on a team. So I think that's probably going to be one of our big events. But really, I just want to find some opportunities to give this girl some downtime. I do want to point out the
Yes,
same
sir.
speedometer test that we did with X Elite.
Yeah.
I just ran on Chrome, on just the public install for Chrome. So the Windows on ARM does not automatically install. I'm going to have to go and find the Canary version for Chrome specifically for Windows on ARM. So X Elite scored something like 430
Hmm.
on Edge. And
Wow.
so, oops. So this is the Robo Ancala with the 8CX Gen
Gen 2,
3.
Gen
And
3, yeah, yeah.
Gen 3. And so
SQ3 or
this is Edge, which is like 300 runs less on speedometer. This is speedometer 2.1. There is speedometer 3, which is an even more aggressive version of this browser benchmark. But X Elite almost tripled this score on Edge. And then it got even faster on Chrome. So I think it was like 438 on Edge and it was 460 something on Chrome. But
it was
like
376. Oh, you sorry, you're saying on Edge. Yeah, it was 438 on Edge. Hold on, let me double check here. That was Edge that was 438, but and then that was comparing it to 376 on the Intel side.
Intel C. But
Yeah.
just for the ARM side, just for the ARM chip. And then I think it was 462 or something like that. But it was 460 something.
Mhm.
So on my Robo Ancala, I just reinstalled Chrome. 153 on Edge, which actually isn't too far off from my older Threadripper. My older Threadripper, I think, only scored like 160.
Oh wow.
Again, I'm doing upgrade. And then Chrome,
Oh,
60.6.
6
So
point. Yeah.
not great. I need
Not
to
a,
go and find that whatever Canary build or just see. I wonder if this
Bill-
this like Windows on ARM Chrome update is really only for X Elite. Like if it's not going to install on something else, we'll have to see. But so far, there's still no reason for me to use Chrome on my Robo Ancala.
and at that point, Juan goes and actually proceeds to uninstalling Chrome.
Actually, you know what?
Oh,
I bet you my Firefox score will not be very impressive. So let me try
it's
pulling up
so. I mean, obviously,
Firefox.
the scores are subjective to a certain point, but it still shows the potential. I would be surprised if it doesn't run at least better than what you got with Chrome, like from a number standpoint.
I want to see if it beats Chrome. So the problem is like I fire up Firefox and I've got like a lot of tabs. I don't want to
So
close out all my tabs. So this is not a scientific assessment,
it's not a one
but
to one.
I will be shocked if it's
Less.
like I think it's reasonable to say it would be somewhere in between Edge and Chrome, but I'll be shocked if it's closer to Edge than it is to Chrome,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
No, I'm
In
with
the
you. I'm
upper
with you.
half, in between
You
the
you
two.
want it to be more in family with Chrome than it is for a non
I would
built-in.
expect it to be actually kind of closer to the Chrome side of the halfway point, but it's almost done now. So I think it's gonna be it'll handily beat Chrome.
I no, dude. I mean, you could see how it runs, how well it loads, how well it interacts with the internet. It's optimized. It's designed and it's built on a better interaction function, and it's designed for it. It's optimized for it to run. So, like I said, I'd be surprised if it actually
Yep.
performs under.
Now I get to eat my words immediately. So again, we'll take it back. Edge, 153, then Chrome, 60.6, not good, not good at all, and then Firefox,
131.
131. just nipping at the heels. It's not. It's actually, that's a pretty sizable gap between Firefox
And
and
Edge.
Edge. But
Yeah.
again, that is actually significantly closer to the Chrome. I mean, to the Edge side of this than I thought it would be. I thought it would actually be kind of a bit more mid pack. So, very
Hey,
encouraging.
always.
And I think again we just keep getting these little tidbits, this little trickle of information.
Slowly but
As
surely, it's gonna work. I mean,
yeah.
no. I'll think of it. Look, the Robin runs very nicely with the. In general, it runs very good. To me, it has a lot of the aspirations and performance that I loved about on what we got with the Pro 9 5G. The one that I missed on it was obviously the connectivity part. I wished it had a built-in modem. That to me was the biggest part of what I loved about the Pro 9 5G was that always on connected function. I didn't need it to have the fastest internet, but if I needed it, I opened it up wherever I was. I don't have to worry about opening up
Hmm.
hotspots and XYZ, whatever, to be able to just get it running. So for me, it was um, it absolutely great. And for the price point and for the features that it offered, it's an absolute banger for what you get with it and everything, the case, the carrying, all of that good stuff,
Hmm.
even the Bluetooth keyboard. So it's
Yeah.
good.
Oh, it's great.
Um,
But
so
we're also now getting all the little sneak peeks, and I'm increasingly anxious to see what kind of
who will be out
OEM
that? Who will be?
solutions we
Yeah,
get with
which
XELEAT.
OEM will be out the gate first? Is it
We
Samsung?
still
Is it
had that show.
Lenovo?
I
I know. We
So
were talking
now
about
increasingly, I mean, like I had a bunch of people when I did my last like Windows on ARM video, a bunch of people saying like, "Oh, it's got to be Samsung," and I was like, I don't know, maybe. Actually, now it seems like Samsung might be one of the front runners. Lenovo hasn't been making as much noise about this. I have no idea what shape HP or Dell might be in.
Mhm.
Microsoft, they're going to be putting their event out in May,
Okay.
but that I don't think that means that they're going to be shipping product in May. That could be
No,
like, hey, we're going to
that
talk
could
about
be.
this. We just announced Surface Pro 10 and Surface Laptop 6 for business, and now we're going to start talking about fulfilling just general consumer demand in July.
Yeah.
And that leaves, I'm not saying it is that. I'm just saying, we can see from these announcements sometimes there's a window between announcing and delivering, and Samsung could sneak in there. I really was not expecting Samsung. I don't think either of us predicted Samsung being first. I said it was probably going to be Microsoft, and I think you said Lenovo.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's what
because
our wager
I,
was on.
I think because I mean historically they've been venturing into this type of tech and or even just new development, new hardware. Typically, the Lenovo's is basically, I mean, the Legion Go. We're looking at some of their other even foldable. I still have to finish putting that video, the X1 Fold that I have, and they're just conceptually, just from a foldable experience and new
Hmm.
tech, I can see them being in there. I mean, this is literally their bread and butter. I think X Elite will be in the current generation or in the current version that we're looking at right now, geared at a well-rounded PC that does a lot of things well. And we're still not at the point where we're starting to see it as a device that is specifically designed for gaming, specifically designed for editing. It's going to be that general all-rounder, but I feel like that's what 90% of people will probably be working in anyways. It's not the niche specification that we need. It's more so into I want it to run everything, all my apps correctly. I want it to run smoothly. I want it to have great battery life. And I want to be able to carry it without having to feel like I need to buy a backpack for the power brick that comes with it. You know what I mean?
Right?
So with everything that we saw all running at around the 20 watt setup, I I'm really interested to see what they can do with higher power performance. Can they push it further? But the reality is even at 20 is where on system wide level,
Yeah.
it's still I think it's very, very surprising and very promising.
And my prediction is the way that Qualcomm has talked about their reference devices, that we won't see a triple
Well,
performance gain, because they talk about the whole system. So the whole
well, yeah,
system at
no,
24
exactly.
watts and the whole system at 80 watts. I think you might be able to pump, a 20 to 30% gain out of the exact same chip just by putting fans on it. But really, the entire system is, higher resolution and brighter screens
More,
and
yeah,
more
the
RAM and
features that they're going to
storage,
add.
and
Exactly.
all of that contributes to an overall 80-watt system. But I really want to see, like, just put a fan on this thing. I just want to see what happens when you put a fan on it, and that might be my new system. If DaVinci Resolve is decently optimized for that, and I can go from a 1200-watt power supply in my workstation down to an 80-watt laptop, I'm game. I want that. I really want to see if I
I'm
can make that happen, and then I spend a little less on electricity in this office.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. Look, I'll be honest. There are days that I wish that it would have been easy for me to transfer my projects directly from my desktop or from any system I'm using directly on my Mac, let it run. DaVinci right now for me on M1 Max has been magic. It runs close second to that to my desktop that's running a 79, I think it was a 7950 3D and
Mm-hmm.
running a 4900 GPU NVIDIA, and it still beats it. Like, this is the
Yeah.
stupidity part of, like, I don't understand. But from a Windows standpoint, the way I like to work, I prefer still to edit on my desktop. That's going to be the better solution for me. But again, this year hasn't been as much travel as I thought it was going to be like last year. Last year we were all over the place. This
Yeah.
year it's not as much, but I'm still with it that I'm back, we work back in the office and so on. I'm finding myself working on my laptop during my lunch hours a lot more. And I appreciate having
Mm-hmm.
flexibility and
Yeah.
honestly, the reliability of what DaVinci can do. Having that on a Windows system, having it more accessible to more people is not only beneficial for DaVinci, but it's also beneficial for the market as a whole, because we really need to move away from this conception that a laptop cannot last you 10 hours plus. A laptop should die
Yeah.
in a few hours, that you are looking at a compromised solution when you go to a laptop because desktops are the best. No, you should pick the format that works better for you. If you're going to be in the
Mm-hmm.
office all the time, working all day, then maybe a desktop is the better solution. But if you're mobile and you need to be in different rooms, different conferences, travel, whatever, laptops need to be able to perform just as good. And I think Windows on ARM and ARM in general, I think has brought that revolution to that. I'm not going to say stagnant, but kind of like pretty much to a certain point.
It's 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 been a little. I
It's
think a
been,
word
yeah,
like stagnant is probably harsh but fair,
yeah,
because we've been in this duopoly between Intel and AMD,
for the longest
and
time. Yeah, exactly. And it's just, I mean, like, yeah,
like
I'm getting the,
as we're making this transition out, obviously if I
yeah,
were to put modern guts into this giant server chassis that I have under my desk, I could make a no an incredible performer if power is no concern,
yeah.
right? I can put ridiculous chips in here and I can spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But Brian's comment here is the fact that we can have a conversation about dropping from a 1200-watt system to an 80-watt laptop just shows how incredible of a time we're in for on this. And my experience is, do I want to build another $8,000 to $10,000 rig, or can I pick up an 80-watt laptop that is still going to be a significant performance advantage over, or even if it's just a tiny performance advantage, I'm going from a 1200-watt system with a Threadripper and a 4070 down to a laptop.
A laptop. No, I know exactly. It's I learned I leaned heavily on the laptop when my system was down last year,
Yeah.
and I learned quite a bit of how much I appreciated how the Mac the M1 Max was performing and working for me. So I'll say the reality is, yes, it saves you money, it saves you time, and it's portable, which makes it so that you don't have to be sitting in an office all day long. Like, again, I love my system. I love gaming on this here, but having a laptop that could perform relatively decent on the go, that doesn't break the bank and has decent battery life, will always be a winner for me, because it's, like they say, the best camera is the camera you have with you on your phone or in your pocket. And we need to make things more mobile and functional to the same level as we anticipate
Yeah.
desktops to run. So for sure. But
So
yeah,
Well, on that note, we should probably start wrapping this
I
thing
was
up.
about, yeah, I was in a nice longer way of saying,
I need to
what's
go to bed. I'm so tired.
what's coming up with you on for the rest of the week, or anything we should expect?
So I published publicly. It was an editorial that I talked about a couple weeks back,
Okay.
comparing point and shoot cameras against the Vivo X100.
They all
Oh, I
lose,
don't
yeah.
have it. But I had the little Galaxy camera and I found it in a box and I was like, hey, this could be kind of a cute editorial. So I just published that on somegadgetguy.com. It was in early access on patreon.com/somegadgetguy. And tomorrow I should have a video out about this really fancy 34-inch gaming monitor that I've been
Nice.
using for a bit. And it's not an OLED. And the MSRP is probably going to scare some folks away, but it's a really interesting blend of gaming and premium TV features from Innocent.
Oh, okay.
So they've been making some really good budget gear. I still use their art monitor
I
as
was
my
I was
other
about to say, yeah, I
monitor.
remember you had monitor
Um,
from them from last year, or maybe a year,
and
a couple years ago.
this sort of mini LED solution that they've got, pretty good.
Good.
Pretty real good. It's pretty. So that video should be going out tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, great. For me, I'm finishing up. I'm trying to finish up my catching up on just like all the sponsored stuff in there. I have one video coming out tomorrow, hopefully, or maybe Saturday at the latest. It's I'm not going to say a smart toothbrush, but essentially it's a budget friendly toothbrush, the Lathan Wave toothbrush that
Delightful.
it's trying to compete with the with some of the Oral-B stuff that's already on the market, but for $62 for an app connected Bluetooth connected toothbrush that can go with you anywhere you want to go, and it's small and portable and powerful. I feel like it's a piece of tech that we should all appreciate when we're traveling and space is limited. You don't have to carry everything, but either way, getting that one hopefully worked out. So by either maybe tomorrow late afternoon or maybe Saturday morning, we'll
Great.
be going into that, and ahead of all the storms that are coming in this weekend, because we're not going to be able to do any video outside video shooting. We're getting a lot of rain in Southern California, and for everybody that does celebrate Easter, happy Easter. I know we're probably not going to see each other till after. This is the last Thursday of March, as you can know it. Q1 is over, baby. Let's get into Q2
Woo
and start seeing some of the
woo.
other cool things,
Earnings reports
earnings and all of that,
and
and
shareholder calls. Woo!
but make sure to catch Juan on Monday for the SGGQA 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on the same channel, but under his show, as well as on Twitch, and of course his links and my links are all in the show notes in the description. Thank you very much for hanging out with us. Thanks to everybody for hanging with us on this beautiful Thursday. Take care, be safe, and we'll have hopefully a lot more cool things to check out with you guys next week on the best of our week.